Welcome back to another Postmedia Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garrioch, pleased to be joined by Senators President of Business Operations, Anthony LeBlanc. And Anthony, Happy New Year. And as we get started here in the new year, eight of the club's last 9 games have been postponed. As we sit today, the Seattle game Thursday has been postponed. Were you like the rest of us and hoping in November that we were past all of this, Anthony?
Well, yeah, and first off, Bruce, happy New Year to you as well, and to everyone who's listening or watching or both. Yeah, I mean, look, I think all of us, if we would have sat here a year ago and said, hey, by the way, come January of 2022, we're going to be essentially in the exact same situation that we were in January of 2021. I think we would have all thought that, first off, that would be a nightmare, and nobody would have thought that was true. And yeah, as recently as November, it appeared that we were, kind of moving our way out of this thing. The world was somewhat coming back to normal. I had the opportunity to, be in our building and a couple of other buildings. And, other than the obvious changes of mask wearing, which was necessary, and a few other things, we didn't expect things to really change in a material way. I mean, look back to the Board of Governors meeting that was held in early December. I mean, at that point, it was still full steam ahead in regards to going to the Olympics. So, the amount and the ways that things have changed in just over a month truly is mind-boggling.
And I look at the situation now, there's nothing you can do about the postponed games. That is out of your control. It's out of your hands. But to miss the holiday season must be a bit, and maybe devastating is overstating it, but it's difficult for this franchise, right? I mean, in my discussions with you and Eugene, you had more than 16,000 tickets sold for 3 of those 5 games, I believe.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the league is always very helpful when we go through the scheduling, or they certainly try their best, and I find that they've been very helpful through the years of my involvement with the league, of understanding those points that are important for a club from a selling tickets perspective. And of course, the holiday season's always been important for the Senators because of the fact that you got the Bell Capital Cup. So that those, along with, we had some pretty marquee opponents, 2 games against Boston, a game against Pittsburgh. We had a lot of tickets sold and expecting some pretty full houses. But, the one thing that, in particular, you mentioned Eugene, he's always focused on the health aspects first. Yeah. And when things started to go sideways, I mean, the first email I received from him, or the first text when things seemed to be going the way they were going, wasn't about our schedule. It wasn't about, the revenues. It was, what can we do to help? I'm going to reach. And he reached out directly to Doug Ford and said, to Premier Ford, and said, what is it we can do as an organization to provide assistance? If you need our facility for vaccinations, if you need it for, rapid testing, anything along those lines. So that was his initial go-to. So I think because of the fact that we're dealing with, this frightening disease and this very scary variant. Yeah, you're right. There is no question from a business perspective, the hit was extreme, as it has been for every club through this past 2-year odyssey. But the focus is always first and foremost on the health and safety of, our players, who have obviously been devastated by this disease starting in November, and then recently right now, the staff, and then, of course, our fan base. So we don't want to be bringing people. Eugene has said that. He said that to you from day one. Yeah, he is not going to be. Yeah, he's not going to be someone who hosts a super spreader event. So while this is not something that we're happy about, nobody is, we're certainly not going to go the other way and kind of throw caution to the wind.
Do you anticipate that homestand at the end of the month? You're home for 1 game on January 18th after this trip, but then you're home for, I think it's a 4-game homestand at the end of January. Do you anticipate that goes ahead even with empty seats? Are you hoping by then maybe some of the restrictions are lifted? And I preface this all by saying I know it's hard for you to predict.
Well, I mean, firstly, there's the question about the NHL schedule. So I defer to people like Steve Hatzapetros at the league and Bill Daly and ultimately the commissioner. I don't think there's much time, and I saw Deputy Commissioner Daly's comments and understand where he's coming from. I don't think there's much room left in the schedule if we're going to get a full schedule in, which is everybody's desire. So I don't see or anticipate many changes in regards to the dates of our home games. The question, to your point, will be, what is the capacity going to be? So we, because of the current situation, it is our understanding that these current restrictions will be in place until January 26th. So that means the upcoming 2 home games on the 18th and 25th, ironically, both against Buffalo. We do anticipate that, unfortunately, those will be games played without fans in the building. Now, of course, things could change. And my expectation is if all of a sudden, miraculously, things start to improve, I think that the government has shown, good and bad. And I don't mean that they've made bad decisions, but for good reasons and bad reasons, they've been somewhat nimble in making changes. So we'll certainly watch that closely. It's a verbose way of saying, yes, I certainly hope that when we get into the end of January and certainly into February, we've got some big games coming up. We've got, from a gate perspective, we've got Montreal, we've got Edmonton, we've got to reschedule all those games, the aforementioned 2 against Boston, Pittsburgh. Those are big gates for us. So we certainly hope that by the time that those come around, that we're back to, some form, if not full capacity. But we defer to the province, to Ottawa Public Health, to the NHL, and hope and pray that we'll get there.
Do you anticipate, Anthony, and this is maybe a tough question, but do you think we will see any of your, how do I put this? Do you think we'll see your schedule make big changes to your schedule as a result of having to reschedule 8 home games? Or do you anticipate they fit the 10 games in that you're owed right now where they fit? And I don't know if I'm making.
Yeah, no, I think I know where you're coming from, Bruce. Look, obviously the difficult decision had to be made between the league and the PA about not going to the Olympics this year. Right. Everyone understands that, and what that did, though, is it did open up a couple of weeks in the schedule. Now, our building, luckily, has openings. We do have some concerts booked, and of course, that other side of our business is now a big question mark. Obviously, the upcoming Eric Church concert, a very big country show, has been postponed to July. So we anticipate that could continue, depending on capacity restrictions for some of the shows. But a long way of saying, we do have availability. We work very closely. A gentleman named Tim Swords within our organization on the building ops side kind of leads the building bookings, and he's been working again. Steve Hatzapetros at the NHL is the lead schedule maker, working very closely. I've been on the phone with we refer to him as Hotsy. I've been on with Hotsy a number of times over the last couple of weeks. So I think that the majority of the games that are missing, we should be able to slot in with our open availability. A lot in February is my expectation, but I haven't seen a draft schedule. And then probably a couple will get pushed into March or April. But I don't anticipate, and again, I'm not that this could change, but I don't anticipate games that are currently scheduled for, call it, the end of February, March, April, those games to change. But who knows?
And that was my point. Or they're just going to tear up the schedule and start a new one because certainly, Anthony, that talk has been out there that certainly amongst players was that they were just going to tear up this schedule and go ahead with another one. But one of the things that when you do sit down with scheduling, how much of a role does the general manager Pierre Dorion and the coach DJ Smith play in this on your consultation about where this fits in hockey?
Oh, 100%. They're very involved. Pierre and I would say Eugene, are kind of the three people that look at it. And look, everything in this organization, we certainly look to Eugene for his approval and his guidance. And schedule is one of them. And that happens. Usually we do schedule, for next year, we would start working on schedules now. And from a hockey perspective, the most important things that I always hear from Pierre, that he hears from DJ is, things like 3 and 4s, the back-to-backs. minimizing travel. It's all the things that are important towards the team and their, being physically at their top, at their peak for these games. So with this, constricted schedule, it does mean there are going to be a couple of those. But I do know through my initial conversations with the league, they try their best to minimize those. But again, there's 32 teams. And there's 32 buildings, and a lot of those buildings, if you're, my pal Nick Eves, who's kind of my counterpart with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, that building has a lot of tenants. You've got the Raptors, you've got, a busier concert schedule. If you're trying to book Madison Square Garden or Staples Center, that gets a little bit more difficult. Having that said, as I referred to a couple of minutes ago about the concert business, it is, once we get ourselves back to normalcy, it is going to be a very robust concert season for us for the foreseeable future, but it just keeps delaying, it seems. But yeah, I mean, obviously there is no question. The hockey side, the business side, this is probably one of our tightest integration points, is working on the schedule.
And I guess I don't think you anticipate that all. The other thing you want to avoid too, Anthony, I'm sure, is finishing the season with a 13-game homestand or something like that. My guess would be that, would you think right now that 6 of those home games would be in February and the other 2 would be later in March?
That's probably my best guess, just knowing.
Well, I'm just looking at holes in the schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean, that probably is my best guess. And then look, you have to remember as well, it gets tricky when you've got to reschedule, like, for example, the game that we were supposed to play in Seattle. That means we've got to get ourselves back out west. So those types of things come into play, and it gets, it does get tricky. And by the way, we're dealing with the exact same situation down in Belleville. I was on the phone with them yesterday about their games coming up this weekend, and are they being played? The answer is yes, they will be played without fans. But it's two buildings and 2 teams that we're dealing with, so it's not just the Senators in Canada; it's the Senators in Belleville as well.
Well, and you kind of beat me to my last point on this panel, is there's a big commitment there in playing without fans, because that is far and away a very gate-driven league.
Oh, very much so, but no different than for us, here in Ottawa. I mean, we rely on the gate very much so, as does every team. But yes, in Belleville, that is the driving force of the revenue. But look, these are difficult decisions that have to be made, and again, these are, from our owner, Mr. Melnick's perspective, these are decisions that he has to deal with from a financial perspective. So it certainly continues, as I've said, and I beat this drum as I come up on my 2-year anniversary in the role. That is a very strong commitment to the franchise and to the future of the franchise when you have to host games without fans in the building in both Canada and in Belleville.
Last question: how are you handling kind of those tickets for that game? Because I'm sure people, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask that for people who are wondering, they're holding tickets for those games that have been rescheduled.
Yeah, so I mean, we're working with our starting with our season seat membership for games that can't be attended. So I mean, right now we haven't played a single game that has not had fans. We anticipate that will happen on the 18th. We anticipate that'll happen on the 25th. But because of just the quick changes that have happened, we're not going to make any drastic decisions until, day of game, so to speak. In regards to how we work in consultation with our season seat membership base. Look, obviously we will owe our membership, we will owe casual ticket buyers, we'll owe our sponsors games that are played without fans in the building, and we'll work with everybody in their capacity, be it a ticket holder, a suite holder, a sponsor, in how they would like to repurpose those assets. Is it tickets for additional games? Is it refunds? Those types of questions are ongoing, and the preparations are being made. It's just, it means that, our poor ticket and premium sales staff, really the sales organization, and then finance, and pretty much the whole organization has a lot of extra work to do, but hey, this is the job we signed up for. Great.
Listen, I appreciate your time today. Thanks very much for joining us. That's the Post-Media Ottawa Senators panel. Thank you to Senators President of Business Operations, Anthony LeBlanc. I'm Bruce Garrioch. We'll see you next week.